I'm Vincent Ciaravino. I'm a product manager at Google Cloud AI, and I'm joined with my colleague, Eesha, Pathak, also a product manager focused on AI ethics and governance. We have one of our lead security engineers, Mark Schadler, and we also have our customer, Ken McAfee, from Equifax, who we've been working with for quite a while. Today's agenda, we'll be talking about meeting the Gen AI opportunity, Google Cloud's approach to enterprise readiness, empowering your teams with generative AI, and how all this comes together at Equifax. So the world has been shifting. Organizations from more parts of the world are using AI. At Google Cloud, we've been seeing this from across different geographies that we didn't see it before. Previous to now, there were hotspots where AI expertise, massive amounts of data, and the compute and processing to generate AI were happening. But now it's much more democratized. And we've also seen it from industries who have always used AI, such as retail, healthcare, and financial services, but they're using it in more ways. And this is driven by teams and individuals applying AI in new ways, even if they didn't have AI expertise. They can easily get access to AI-powered applications to drive their business forward. In part because the opportunity for Gen AI is clear. In a recent McKinsey study, they had two findings related to this. They found that 96% of CXOs recognize that Gen AI will soon become critical to the success of any organization, and also that 70% of employees' tasks have the potential to be automated by Gen AI and other technology. Additionally, the barriers to entry are being broken down. We're seeing powerful, pre-trained foundation models that are ready to use out of the box via API and UI. So customers no longer need to collect massive amounts of data, label that data, build machine learning models, and train those models for days or weeks. We're also seeing tools that are simple to use that allow enterprise users to take their proprietary knowledge and data to customize these powerful foundation models, to make them more unique to their business use cases. And then we're also seeing that AI is embedded throughout enterprise tools and workflows, so they can easily leverage these technologies with no expertise. But with great opportunity comes great responsibility. So in a couple of recent Gartner studies, they found that 69% of employees have bypassed the organization's cybersecurity guidance in the past 12 months. And as we're seeing the potential of generative AI and how it democratizes access and how powerful it is, it's reasonable to see why employees at organizations are so eager to get access. And in doing so, they might bypass some security controls. And related to that, Gartner predicts that by 2025, generative AI will cause a spike in cybersecurity resources required to secure this at both the application and data security layers. So although the opportunity is great, it's all of our responsibility to make sure that our employees are doing so responsibly. So at Google Cloud, we've built end-to-end workflows going from infrastructure, data, and AI to help address this problem and make it easy for our customers to manage and govern this. We operate across different integrations. We support any user, and we also make it so that regardless of the path they take on Google Cloud, whether they start with data on BigQuery or AI on Vertex AI, as they bring those together, they start to get more benefits such as democratization, productivity, collaboration, governance, and scale. So this unified technology stack really reduces cost and time to ROI and time to value. So with democratization, we have more capabilities to meet every user where they're at, regardless of their AI expertise. We have Gemini on Google Cloud and in Workspace to power experiences for business users. We have pre-trained, powerful foundation models for developers. And we have tools that allow data analysts and data engineers, data scientists, and machine learning engineers to customize those tools, those models. And as more users get into the system, they benefit from our end-to-end integrations, which improve productivity because there's less time spent building integrations. And as more users are in the system and they're using AI and building AI, they need ways to collaborate. And that's where we have common interfaces across the data and AI cloud at Google Cloud, such as Colab Enterprise, which is a common notebook interface used by data analysts, data engineers, data scientists, and machine learning engineers. And as you have more users collaborating and using and applying data and AI, you need to worry about security, privacy, and governance, and how this data and AI is being used and where it's being used. And we have tools to help you there. And all of this is in service of being able to help you operate at enterprise scale. So if we zoom into the Google Cloud AI portfolio, I'll cover the bottom, which is the kind of foundation. And this is built on AI-optimized infrastructure, the most powerful GPUs, and our proprietary AI chips, TPUs. On top of that, you'll see that we have the Model Garden, where we have over 130 curated models from Google, such as Gemini and Imagine, open models such as Mistral and Llama, and partner models such as Claude 3. The layer above that, which is Vertex AI Model Builder, has simple tools that allow you to build your own custom models completely from scratch, or take our powerful foundation models and customize them for your business use cases using your proprietary knowledge and data. On top of that, we have Vertex AI Agent Builder, where we have components that you can construct to create your own search and conversation agents. And if you want something out of the box to solve an end-to-end use case, we have Gemini and Google Cloud to help with code assistance, Gemini and Workspace for creativity and production in presentations and docs. And then we also have AI solutions to solve use cases such as contact center and retail search. So in summary, we have AI capabilities for all users, whether they're using AI-powered applications or pre-trained foundation models, or customizing those foundation models with their own data, or end-to-end, or tools to build end-to-end custom AI. And all of this works across different modalities, whether you're doing predictive AI, such as regression and classification, forecasting, entity extraction, or generative AI, where you're generating or summarizing text or code, and all the way to multimodal, where you combine text, images, video, and audio together. So with that, I hope you have an understanding of our portfolio, and I'll hand it off to my colleague, Eesha, to talk about enterprise readiness.
Thank you, Vincent. Hi, folks. I hope you've had an amazing day at Next so far. Lots of amazing sessions. I'm Eesha. I'm a group product manager with the Cloud AI team. And as Vincent mentions, I'd like to talk to you about enterprise readiness with a compliance posture. We get lots of questions about enterprise readiness from our customers, such as, my data is my differentiator, but how do I make sure that I can protect my IP? I want AI to be everywhere in my organization, but how do I make sure that it's secure? Or I want to offer AI to all of my end users, but how can I make sure that I mitigate societal harms? Now, we take these questions very seriously, as we should, and we've invested in a bunch of different work streams to be able to address this. We have work streams for data governance, privacy and compliance, security, as well as responsible AI. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the first two, data governance, privacy, compliance, and security, which my colleague Mark will cover. And later today, as well as through this week, we'll have more sessions for responsible AI, where we'll go over how do we plan to mitigate societal harms and biases, the tools, et cetera, that we provide for that. Okay, let's start with the first one, which is privacy and compliance. We have a cloud data stewardship team, and that ensures responsible use of our cloud AI ML data, and that we uphold our customer commitments. And this isn't new. Actually, way before the current Gen AI boom happened, we published the AI ML privacy commitment, which kind of essentially upheld our commitment to customers that you control your data, and we provide the highest levels of security to you for your data. The blog posts are long and wieldy, so I'll just cover the brief tenets for you. First, you control all of the data that we process for you at all times. By default, we never train our foundational models on your data, and we will never look at your data without a legitimate business need to support you, and even that is only done with explicit permission from the customers. I'd like to peel a little bit of what happens behind the layers, just for that third bit, what's really happening behind the scenes, what do you mean you can't look at my data, and so forth. So the first is, as many of you are aware, we get the request with a prompt, data is encrypted in transit, this is fed to our model that generates a result. We also offer tuning capabilities. And at no point during this process or the tuning do we ever need to rebuild our foundational model with your data. What happens during tuning is our service essentially is associated with a unique tuning job that's associated with a customer. This job results in the creation of some learned parameters called adapter weights. And at inference time, the prompt along with the adapter weights is sent to the model, which then generates an output and returns it back. These adapter weights, like I said, they're unique to the customer and they're managed using CMake keys. Customer can choose to delete these adapter weights at any time. Let's talk indemnity. Indemnity, again, very complex topic, lots to cover. To put it very plainly for you, if you are ever challenged on copyright grounds while you're using our generative AI models or our products that are offering these generative AI models, then we will cover all of the legal costs involved. And again, this isn't new. We've always stood behind our practices. Now we're making it more explicit through a two-pronged approach. First is training data indemnity, where we're saying that any allegation that Google's use of training data infringes upon any third party's intellectual property right is covered by us. We're also extending this to the generated output from our models. I do want to call out that as our customers, you have a role to play here. We provide several tools, such as the citation tooling tool, associated with the responsible use of data. So this indemnity only applies if you do not turn off these tools and you do not willfully try to infringe upon any third party's IP rights. In summary, as you heard, our approach to privacy kind of upholds our customer commitments, and AI is not different. We've had a privacy by design approach for all of our enterprise products. We offer several enterprise products that help you secure your own workflows. For instance, the DLP, the data loss prevention tool, that allows you to scrub sensitive PII, email addresses, and everything else from your own workflows. You can use this to scrub this sort of sensitive PII text from images before feeding those images to your own ML models for future training. We take this super seriously. We invest in a bunch of privacy tools and certifications and processes and governance mechanisms to make sure that we uphold these commitments. And along the same line, we maintain compliance with a complex and ever-evolving regulatory world. We actually do this based on three key tenets again. One is the foundational certifications, second is the country-specific framework, and third is the industry-specific framework. You'll notice here that we have lots and lots of frameworks across all of these domains. For instance, we invest in the International Organization for Standardization, the ISO 27001 series, lots of privacy and security goodness there. We are attested for that. Similarly, for country-specific frameworks, we've invested in FedRAMP, the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program, as well as the C5, Cloud Computing Compliance Controls Catalog for Germany. FedRAMP is for US, C5 is for Germany, and we've been doing very well in this. Similarly, for industry-specific frameworks, we've invested in HIPAA for healthcare compliance and so forth. And you'll notice lots and lots of these for GDPR, as well as MITRE for India. When you're using Google Cloud, we have your back that you're going to be in compliance with all of the local rules and regulations associated with the industries that you're operating in when you use our products. Along the same lines, I'm super excited to announce today that we now have a FedRAMP High attestation, the highest level of accreditation that can be received for a range of our AI products. And this is very exciting. We will have more and more of these announcements extended to more and more AI services in future. But this essentially validates our assertion that we do offer the highest level of security associated with all of our AI workflows. Another great announcement for today is we're expanding data residency terms. Data residency at rest means we commit to storing customer data only in the location selected by the customer. We had already had 10 countries available since 2023. They're highlighted in green in the slide. Starting today, we'll have 11 additional countries: Finland, Poland, Spain, Italy, Israel, India, Brazil, Australia, Taiwan, and Hong Kong. And we'll have 2 more in the offing, Qatar and Saudi Arabia. So as you can see, there is lots and lots of goodness associated with all of our residency commits as well. And while these residency data at rest commits do not extend to ML processing, in that ML processing can happen outside these countries, We are actually also expanding ML processing commits for EU and US today for our Gemini GA models and Imagine. In that, US customers, the ML processing will happen within the jurisdiction for US, and for EU customers, ML processing will happen within the jurisdiction of EU. This is super interesting. We're also going to expand this more and more to other countries in future based on customer demand and the regulatory needs of those countries. Like I said, for responsible AI, I'll have my colleagues cover this in more depth later today as well as tomorrow, and they'll go over how we plan to uphold our security principles, our cloud AI principles to be socially beneficial and so forth. With that, I'll hand over to my colleague and partner in crime, Mark.
Thanks, Eesha. Hi, everyone. I'm Mark. I'm the engineering lead for security and compliance in cloud AI. And I'm going to touch on security today. So first, I want to talk about how we build security into Google Cloud. And this is as true for AI services as any other Google Cloud service. And that's really with a lens of three things. So that's security by design, by default, and in deployment. And today, I want to talk a little bit more about the in deployment part. I think it's a really interesting part where we overlap with each other. And you may hear people talk about our security controls that we offer for GenAI, like VPCSC, access transparency, et cetera. But I want to go a little bit beyond that today. And so the first thing I wanted to highlight to set up some context is I think the risk profiles are really use case specific. So who is interacting with my system? What data do I trust in that system? What decisions are being made? It's really important to consider the specifics of your use case when you consider like the breadth of risks that you need to address. The second part is your use case is going to be built on a number of levels of abstraction of systems. And in Google Cloud, we offer things like hardware of TPUs all the way up to AI solutions. But some combination of this is going to be used for your use case. And what I think is really interesting on the left-hand side is that with AI, and particularly GenAI, aspects like security, I think get much closer to related functions at a technical level. And so you might talk about something in a security lens and say, hold up, that's a privacy thing or a compliance thing. And I think the reality is it might be yes, both or all of those things. And I think at a technical level, this gets closer with GenAI. It was always true in a sense, but I think it gets even closer today. So I think with that context, the question is, well, how can I help, or how can we help our teams? And I want to talk about three main ways for today. So the first is I think it's more important than ever to talk about security or compliance earlier in your journey. Right? And this needs to consider the architecture that you're using, how does that meet the product needs, what risks does that have from the use case overall. And doing this earlier in your journey allows you to accelerate also later in the system. Right? We'll see AI models evolve very rapidly and continuously, but the systems using and kind of serving or creating those models, those will become like more stable over time. And so by doing this up front, you can accelerate later when models change. The second thing I think that's really important is to bring an AI mindset to your teams. So the barrier to entry with GenAI lowered quite a bit in this world. And that means more people can work in this space and more people can focus on use cases. But it also means more people are contributing to systems that maybe have security implications. And so the list, I will never do it justice for all of it, but these are four things I wanted to talk about today. So the first one is that models are stateless, but applications may not be and are very unlikely to be. But there's a really big distinction here, and I'll zoom into this a little bit later. The second one is that models have in-band management. So this is before my time, but if you think about payphones in the 60s, whistle the right tone, the payphone stops billing you, but the phone stays connected. Right? For me, that's an example of in-band management failure. And while we do a lot of work at Google to make models resilient to malicious input, the reality is we should really consider for some use cases what out-of-band protections we need to add on top of the existing in-band protections that models will have themselves. I think the third aspect is that models have a more unconstrained output space, and this is particularly notable in a more traditional lens of AI where you thought about what is the bounds of the inputs to figure out what the bounds of the output could be. By definition, generative AI will see bits of its inputs and be able to create new things out of that, and so there's a more unconstrained output space. And I think this lends itself well to having an outcomes-focused approach when you think about risks and how you can handle that. And finally, this is maybe a little bit smaller of a detail, but I think data characteristics have changed quite a bit. In traditional AI, it was how much data could I get, and more is better, and I just want even more. and we'll make a better model. And that might be true for the foundation models themselves, but if we think about using these models effectively with things like tuning, what we see is very low volume data, but of high quality is what's most effective. And if you think about this from a security lens, that means like tripwires of how much data is being egressed out of my training buckets. That might not trigger in the same way today as what it did back then when data was simply much more massive to achieve good results. And then I think the third thing is to not be blinded by only the novel aspects of AI for security. So my experience has been that 80% of our challenge is still traditional security as we know it. Who has access to the system? How do I control that? How do I think about the supply chain of my data? I think that's as important as ever, even with AI systems. They are systems themselves. At the same time, there is a slice of the world that is, I think, new and novel for AI security. And I think in this space, there's still a split of two things. Like using an AI mindset before and like having that understanding, you can map these risks to traditional mitigations. And then there is still this slice where we have novel risks without traditional mitigations, where we need to think about novel mitigations. And I think this is where we can partner together, and Google will continue to evolve our portfolio to help here as well. So with those three things in mind, I wanted to zoom in on one of the examples for the AI mindset as an example of how we could walk through things and then draw implications to help us on the security side. And so I wanted to give an example of me interacting with a chat system. On the left is the chat UI that I'm using, and on the right, I wanted to show what the model input is. And so I asked a model who was the inventor of calculus. That input is sent to the model, and it gives me the results of Newton and Leibniz. And so here I follow up, and I ask, how old were they when they invented it? And I think here I'll take a pause, because the important part from a user perspective is I continued my chat, or my session. I just said, how old were they? But from the model side, if you see what it got as an input, it got the entire context of that conversation, right? And that's because model inference is stateless. So if I would just say, how old were they when they invented it to the model, it would have no idea that I was talking about Newton and Leibniz. And so what we see here is that state, or the persistence of the state, is an application level thing, not a model thing. The model didn't remember that I was talking about Newton and Leibniz. And so by providing all of that context, the model can nicely answer my question here. Right. And so here I wanted to summarize that with, I think, a few takeaways. Right? The model doesn't remember what it was asked. In this case, it was the application layer providing that memory of my session. And so if we expand on that a little bit further, because the model inference is stateless, the model is not able to share knowledge between interactions. So if a different user came, started a different session, and talked to it, it would have no idea that I discussed Newton and Leibniz with this. At the same time, the application layer can absolutely enable that knowledge sharing. And so this is where separating the model and the application layer becomes really important of where do we put controls and how do we rationalize that. Of course, there's a gotcha with everything. So if I would take information like that and put it in tuning data and tune a model, the model can intrinsically learn this. And if something is intrinsically learned, it could be shared in any usage of it by any customer. And so I think the real takeaway from this is actually to distinguish between data we use in inference and data we use in tuning or training, because how this will be exposed during its usage will be wildly different. And for me, this is an example with the AI mindset that you can take statements, like was previously shown, and walk through examples of how to bring education to a broader set of people that isn't overwhelming or needing like an AI research background. So overall, I just wanted to repeat the three main takeaways. For me, one is consider security early in the process, educate and bring an AI mindset to your teams, and don't get lost only in the novel parts of AI security. And I want to end it with the reality that we have a shared fate to succeed together, and we're here to help, and I'm very happy to talk about this with everyone else. And with that, I will hand it over to Ken.
Thanks, Mark. First, I want to start off by apologizing for the pre-COVID headshot. So, my name's Ken McAfee. I am in charge of cloud services enablement at Equifax, and a large part of that, when we started off, included enablement of Vertex AI for our teams. But first, I want to give you a little bit of background here, right? I started in technology, and before I went to go work in security, my tagline on all my emails was trust but verify, because I believe that there's a lot of great engineers out there. Equifax has a lot of great engineers. Great engineers always want to try to do the right thing, So all we have to do is just verify that they're doing the right thing. And then I spent 3 years in security architecture, and I changed my mind. Not that Equifax didn't have good programmers out there. There's still a great bunch of engineers. But the fact is, now I say, trust no one unless you have eaten much salt with them, a Cicero quote, because the point is that no matter how many good developers you have, even a good developer makes a mistake. So what we have developed at Equifax is this non-trusting security model, to put that in place to ensure that we have both security and compliance in Equifax Cloud. Because we are one of the most tightly regulated companies in the industry, and it's not just about competency. Good engineers make mistakes because they're rushing to get their business capabilities put into place. So our risk appetite and our security obligations require us to implement that no-trust model. So what do I mean when I say a no-trust model, right? And how do you enable innovation without trust? So I'm going to take Mark's diagram here, and where he's got productizing the solution, and we have Vertex AI with its security and compliance, and say that we're creating what we call opinionated baselines, or baseline configurations, for all of our services that say, with a given service from Google, this is how you need to configure it at Equifax in order for it to be compliant with our controls and our security checks. And then furthermore, we take that baseline and then put it into infrastructure as code templates, and then deliver it with a certified pipeline so that we can put any preventative controls in place. So the key things are here: I develop those opinionated baselines that defines compliance for your organization, and then verify that implementation, right? So we do allow people to create variations from those baselines. But we need to actually validate the compliance. So we have tools like CSPM or Wiz or Sneak or any number of tools that we can validate the compliance controls. And then lastly, we still have to enable that innovation by decentralized, what we call trusted cloud practitioners. We may not let all developers try to figure out those variations or work on a service, but those that do understand security, DevOps, and how to implement our Equifax controls, they can continue that enablement. So here's our approach. We got to first know and understand the GCP infrastructure patterns. Is this service being run on the Google backplane, the Google Common Infrastructure? Is my data being used in a tenant project, or is it in my own client project? And then understand our use cases and how we can apply those so that we can create those secure by default baselines. And then lastly, continually validate whether that service that has been delivered by the development team, whether it still remains in compliance with that baseline. Because now with AI, and with Vertex AI, the problem becomes a little bit different, right? We have AI and ML models proliferating. If you've seen the model garden, I think maybe it started with 8, and how many is there now, right? Security and compliance now sometimes seems more like an AI hallucination, right? It's an afterthought sometimes, and data scientists are not always good at engineering, and our cloud engineers are not always good at data science. And data science engineers, frankly, are unicorns. If you've got them, pay them well and hold on to them, right? But what we've done is we've taken Vertex AI, which has all these security capabilities built into it, and said this is the baseline of how we're going to deliver Vertex AI and AI at Equifax, and focused on securing the platform, right? So Vertex AI is a platform. We've reviewed it, developed that baseline, so that as new models are delivered via the model garden, we just have to look at the model itself to determine whether it meets our use case, whether it meets our responsible AI concerns. But we don't have to worry about the platform because we've already worried about that. And furthermore, as the Vertex AI systems are available in more places for data residency, our data residency concerns become less. And what we're doing is limiting our strategic reviews to Google AI first. So focusing on ensuring, hey, we already know how Google does AI, and so that's where we're going to get the most bang for our buck at Equifax to deliver AI to our developers, to our systems, and ultimately to our customers. And then, of course, we've moved to integrate that Vertex AI into our DNA environment internally, and then perhaps eventually to our customers as well. And then lastly, governing those strategic investments and tooling for AI to ensure that we're using it well, responsibly, and it actually is something that helps increase the capability of our developers to deliver good platforms. But so you say, how does that work? Because if you start to centralize the review of all of those services, obviously a central capability can be hard to scale, hard to actually innovate on that central capability. So it took us a while to get the Vertex AI baseline out. I say 10 months here. If those involved would probably tell you it was even longer over time, but about 10 months of work. But it paid off. Once we had the platform actually reviewed and we understood it, and our security team understood it, when Gen AI Studio came out last year, we basically were ready at the moment that it was actually ready for us to use in financial services. When VPC service controls were released for Gen AI Studio, about a week later, we had it fully approved for use within Equifax. And then lastly, when Workbench instances came along, it was a little bit of a shorter timeline. When Duet AI for developers came along, it was an even shorter timeline. I do want to emphasize that the primary usage of AI at Equifax, we've been using Equifax AI at Equifax for many years, and I want to refer you to Equifax.ai for our responsible AI principles. But I would also focus and say that the primary use that we're using for Gen AI is on increasing our operational capability and scalability. So even when we reviewed the Gemini models, it did not take us long to approve the model because, again, the platform was already approved. One thing to note, though, what made this easy was once we had our security team understanding how adapter models were used and how it protected our information, so that our information, our company information, was not utilized by the model for training. And they said, of course, well, then how do you customize a model? Well, then we had to help them understand what adapter models looked like, what a parameter-efficient tuning meant. And that was something entirely new for our security team. So it took a while. But then enabling higher security, so say we are actually pursuing a FedRAMP. And so how do we elevate baseline and control checks? When we have that configuration baseline already defined, reviewing it for a higher set of controls is just to identify those elevated controls that need to be put in place, determining where we isolate those enclave workloads, use a provider isolation service like Assured Workloads, and then validate that product compliance to that new baseline, just uplifting the few controls that are necessary for that. So what are the key takeaways here? And they're really no different than for any other service, because Vertex AI as a platform enables us to take that 80% that Mark talked about and as much as possible secure it at a baseline. Dig the pit of success under your user's feet. Don't assume that everyone understands security and compliance, because very often that's not the primary concern of your data engineers, or data scientists, sorry. Automate everything and verify everything. If you can't automate it, do you really need to verify it, would be my first question. The more security and compliance that's built into a service, then the faster we can adopt the capabilities. As Vertex AI increases its ability to be secured, and believe me, it's much better than it was in the first day it came out, then the faster we can adopt the capabilities, and the thinner and simpler our baselines. Enable early use to create expertise and to help create your baselines. We have a team that's centralized that executes our cloud service enablement, but we also have teams throughout the enterprise that help sponsor and help do the work of understanding new services and developing that baseline. International provenance enables localized AI innovation. Now that it's available for Australia, we can leverage it, Vertex AI, more fully in our business units in Australia, so that we don't have to move the data to the capability, but move the capability to the data. And be ready to learn and adopt new Google architecture patterns and capabilities. The whole adapter model was entirely new to our organization, but it was built upon an existing pattern of the tenant projects. So where it eliminates complexity in our baselines and makes the validations easier, and we're in the new patterns. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to bring the rest of the panel back up and open the floor up for any of your questions on Vertex AI or securing it at scale.